this breathing problem, it triggered the release of my consciousness or my soul, whatever it is that I really am, like my core essence. Like it left my body. I emerged from my body. I watched this body fall to the ground, and I was just kind of floating there. And in that state, I was just kind of like a round orb of consciousness. I didn't have a physical body like this. I kind of had what I consider a spiritual body of sorts, but it was just kind of a round orb.
Welcome, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me the chance to share my experience.
You're welcome. And if you wouldn't mind, if you would take us into a little bit about your background and the near-death experience and what you experienced on the other side.
Sure. So just a little bit about me. I work as an electrical engineer. I work on aircraft carriers and submarines for the U.S. Navy. And I'm married with three young adult children. I live in Virginia. I was born in North Carolina in 1975. And when I was two, my parents moved to Chesapeake, Virginia. And, I used to play with my neighborhood friends. We'd kind of run around the neighborhood doing all kinds of stuff. And one day, shortly before my sixth birthday, we were playing in a friend's backyard. There was maybe five or six of us. I was there with my brother and some other friends. And I don't remember what we were doing, but something happened to me where I couldn't breathe. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get air into my lungs. I just couldn't breathe. I don't understand what happened. But I knew this was becoming serious, and I knew it was a problem. So I planned to go home and try to get help from my parents. And so I started just walking away from my friends, and I was getting more and more concerned and frustrated and upset. And this breathing problem, it triggered the release of my consciousness or my soul, whatever it is that I really am, like my core essence. Like it left my body. I emerged from my body. I watched this body fall to the ground, and I was just kind of floating there. And in that state, I was just kind of like a round orb of consciousness. I didn't have a physical body like this. I kind of had what I consider a spiritual body of sorts, but it was just kind of a round orb. And a couple of things happened very quickly. One was my entire life like replayed for me, like very quickly. But it was in extreme detail. It's like nothing was left out. Like every little thing that I had done in life, it like replayed for me. But the twist was not only did I re-experience my thoughts and feelings and emotions, but it's like I could feel how I had impacted others. Like I could literally feel their thoughts and feelings and emotions and like how I had affected them. Um, and as a kid, what really stood out to me was my parents because I guess that was the most meaningful interactions I had. But the effect I had on my parents really stood out to me. My father, he was a good father, but what really stood out to me was the his anger and frustrations, changing dirty diapers and crying and that kind of thing. Like I could feel those frustrations. But also it simultaneously felt like I wasn't to blame. I was just a little baby, and so what, crying and having a diaper, that kind of thing. It's like I could feel that I didn't have any like even though I'd caused it, it wasn't like I had done anything wrong. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. And then my mother, like I could feel the love that she had for me, and that really stood out. Like it had a deeper impact or meaning. Somehow it felt more significant. Like it carried a weight to it that was deeper than uh, just like my lifetime, I guess. I can't really explain it, but there was like a depth to that love that had a deeper meaning that somehow I could understand that. Um, uh, and then another thing that happened like almost immediately, I noticed a pinpoint of light in the distance, and it's like I instinctively knew that there was something important about it. Like I kind of felt drawn to it. Like it's like I had a memory, a relationship or something with it, but I didn't understand it. I didn't remember what was going on or why that pinpoint of light was important. So I didn't continue to focus attention on it. So I was just kind of wandering around aimlessly in my neighbor's backyard. I like looked back over at my friends, and they hadn't noticed that anything had happened to me, and they were just continuing to do what they were doing. And it felt like what we had been doing my entire life. It almost felt trivial. It felt like it was like everything I had done up to that point was so minor and so small that it felt like it was very small, like it had very little significance, or that that's how it felt to me. Um, but I started to have questions, and as I would have questions, it's like the answers would come to me. It's like I was connected to some sort of deeper pool of knowledge, or I was able to access some memories, or I'm not exactly sure. As I would have questions, it's like the answers would come to me in extreme clarity. And one of the first questions I had was, "What am I?" And it's like I could see myself clearly that I was just this orb of consciousness, this ball with faint light coming from within. I had uh, one of the bigger questions I had was, you know, where did I come from? What am I doing in this place? Like, because I had no memory of that. So I had that question. And when I had that question, it's like the answer came to me. It's like it replayed my past experiences that I needed to see in order to answer that question. And so this memory that kind of like replayed for me, like I re-experienced it. It started, I was a, a soul, just a ball of consciousness. And I was with hundreds or thousands of other souls. We were all together, and we were all content. We were, relatively happy, but we were completely ignorant. We didn't know anything. We didn't have any deeper understanding. We just kind of existed, and we were content. And I call this the sea of light where I was. It was very bright, and we were all content and safe, and there was no problems. And we used to periodically get some sort of gift. It's like something would come down, and there would be one for every one of the souls in this group. We'd all get one, and it would kind of like make us happy. As a kid, I thought of it like getting a cookie or a treat, something like that. Just a little nice thing to have. And but one time there was one fewer of these treats than there were souls in this group, and we all recognized that there was one fewer treat than there were members of the group. And so I made the conscious decision, okay, I know that everyone else around me, they want this treat just like I do, so I'm just gonna pass on it so that they can all have it. Um, and when the last treat came to the last soul, I was very gently lifted up out of the group, and the care with which I was treated was really noticeable. The gentleness with which I was lifted, I don't know, I can't tell you. I was treated very carefully, like with a lot of respect. And I was gently lifted up, and simultaneously there was like a higher level mind that contacted me, and it was like a telepathic mind-to-mind communication. It wasn't words or anything like that. And this higher level entity, who I'll just call God for simplicity, said essentially that he was my creator, that I was very much loved and cared for and very important, and obviously not just me, but all of us souls. We were all very important. Um, and that it was a wonderful thing to come into existence, that God had a really terrific, like just a fantastic um, experience for us. Like it was going to be fantastic that I existed. Like it was absolutely wonderful, and he was extremely confident about that. And essentially, he said that I was new, I was ignorant, I didn't know anything, I didn't have any experience, and I needed to get like an education. Like I needed to um, gain experience or gain insight or wisdom. And I needed to learn. Essentially, that's kind of what it boiled down to. And and God had arranged this experience that would allow me to gain all the knowledge I needed so that I could really enjoy my existence. Because what I was enjoying with my with these other souls before that, it was minor in comparison to what awaited me. Like the level of happiness just was significantly higher after I was going to obtain this education. But God said it was going to be difficult, but it's going to be so short. That was kind of what he stressed, was this is a very brief experience that I have to go through, or I need to go through. Um, but it was going to be completely worth it. And his confidence in that was extreme, like just absolutely confident that this was a good plan and that like every detail had been thought about and considered, and the plan was perfect, but it was going to be difficult. And I asked something like, well, can't you just change me? Can't you just make me however I need to be? Like, why do I need to go through this difficult experience? Just change me so I can enjoy my existence without me going through anything difficult. And God explained, yes, he was absolutely capable of forcibly changing me, but that I was created with free will, and that if he was to forcibly change me, it would violate my free will. And it was like a contradiction, like a very core and important reason for our existence was, or our creation was, that God wanted us to have free will and to be able to do what we wanted to, and God was going to respect our free will and wasn't going to forcibly change me, even though it meant that I would need to go through a difficult experience. And so I accepted that. I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. And he further explained that we all had free will, and that God was loving, compassionate, caring, forgiving, had self-control, kind, giving, generous, like all these positive traits, like that's what God is. And that in order for us to really enjoy our existence, we need to freely choose those same traits for ourselves. We need to adopt those traits for ourselves freely, without coercion or without God controlling us. And once we freely adopted those traits for ourselves, then we would be set up to really start enjoying our existence. And that basically God has prepared this entire training program or school or whatever you want to call it, so that we could learn the importance of those traits. So I said, okay, that makes sense, sure. And then God basically said, would before you begin this journey, would you like to see my face? And I said, okay, sure. I had no background, no understanding. And God offered me something, and he seemed very positive and good, and like he cared for me. And so I said, okay, I was just going to go along with what he wanted. So I said, sure. And so my attention was very carefully turned. And instead of looking at all these souls that I had been with, which is what I had been looking at the whole time, my attention was turned, and I was facing this huge sun-like entity. I mean, literally looked like a sun, except it wasn't just like a calm surface. It was like there was billions and billions of souls, kind of like all mixed in together. They kind of like all coexisted, and they were extremely happy. The level of happiness of these souls was just off the chart. And some of them came to the surface to like welcome me into existence. And when they came to the surface, I could see their faces very clearly, and they were very happy that I was, I guess, coming into existence, and that they understood the experience I was going about to go through, because they had all been through it, and they were excited about me uh, basically joining them. They knew that when I was finished with my experience, I'd be able to join them and whatever this thing was that they were in. And they were excited about that because I was going to bring something that no other soul could replicate. Like I was unique, and I don't just mean me, I mean all the souls. It's like we're all unique and irreplaceable, and we contribute something that no other soul can replicate. And so they were really excited that I was going to join them, because that would, even though they were ridiculously happy, like me joining them would increase their happiness even a little bit more. And so they were excited about that. But they welcomed me into existence. They assured me that I would join them when I was ready, and they were really excited about that. And so God asked me, okay, are you sure you're ready to go through this? And it was basically he gave God gave me the choice, but it was basically obvious from what he had told me that this was a good choice. This made sense. It was a good plan. Like I thought, God, this entity knows what he's doing. He knows what's going on. I'm going to go along with this plan because it's a good plan. Um, and when I say he, I just use that pronoun because it's the English language doesn't have the proper pronoun for what God is, so I just use he. But I don't want to indicate that this is like a male. That's just it's just a shortcoming of the English language. Anyway, um, with that, it's like I was very quickly zooming away from that place or that realm or whatever it was. Like I was very quickly leaving, and I still had like mental telepathic communication with God, and we started looking at all these different planets I could go to. There was like just, I guess, millions and millions and millions of different planets I could go to, and we looked at a lot of them. And it was all the same kind of situation where I would have been the spiritual entity in some kind of short physical life that would give me the experiences I needed, the education I needed, so that I could learn and grow and you know mature and learn the importance of these godly characteristics that God wanted us to learn. But eventually we looked at Earth, and there was something about this place. I was like absolutely positive that this is where I wanted to go. It was it just felt like the perfect fit for me. And uh, once I made that decision, God asked me, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sure." And with that, it's like the decision was made, and that was it. I was going to go to Earth. And so that memory kind of like ended, and it answered the question I had had. Um, and so it's like I was floating around in my neighbor's backyard again. And I had more questions and more thoughts. And I wanted to know, okay, I understand where I came from and how I came to this planet, but why am I this person? Why am I Aaron Thomas Green? Like, why am I living this life? How did that happen? Um, and so again, a memory replayed, and I re-experienced something I had previously been through, but had completely forgotten as I, started living this life. And it started out so in that first experience I just told you about, I was like a new soul, like immature. I hadn't done anything before. But now with this new memory of how I became this person, as it started out, it was obvious I was a much more experienced soul. I had many lives before that. Like that was just painfully obvious. And I was like unhappy or upset or frustrated. Mainly, I was like frustrated with myself. Like I felt like I had really screwed up, and I was disappointed in myself and agitated and a little unhappy. And I had some guides that were trying to help me. And essentially, they wanted me to come back to Earth, and I refused. I said, I'm not going back to Earth, and you can't make me. And my guides, they said, you're right, we can't make you go back to Earth, but you can't just stay in this realm, and you can't stay in this. Like I could, but it's like it was a bad decision. If I stayed like that, I would continue to remain like unhappy and agitated and frustrated with myself. I couldn't progress. But going back to Earth would help me get straightened out, or straighten myself out. But I really didn't want to go back to Earth. Um, and they said, well, we can't make you go back to Earth, but how about if we showed you some of the souls that you could help if you did go back to Earth? And somehow that hit like a deeper nerve with me. And I really like that idea. Well, maybe I could help somebody. I guess maybe that's possible. So I said, okay, we can look at some people I'm sorry, some souls that I could help. And so they showed me some souls that I could help. They um, First they need it to like match our vibrations. It's like each soul has its own vibration to it, and for in order for me to meet these souls that I was going to work with, we had to match vibrations. And so in a couple of situations they needed my permission to lower my vibration so that I would match whatever level this other soul was at, so that we could interact. It's like you can't interact with someone who's at a different vibration. um, and But it was really easy for them. It's kind of hard to explain, but it was really simple for these guides to work out our vibrations to get us at the same level. But they needed my approval to do that. So anyway, I agreed, and I met a number of different souls, and somehow that hit me on a deeper level, and I thought, okay, maybe I could go back to Earth. And I asked them, will I be able to help these other souls? And they said, yes, you will. And I asked, will I be able to like get myself in a better place, get myself straightened out, or something like that? I don't know exactly what I asked, but and they assured me, yes, you will. You'll be in a happier state when you leave than you are right now. That was kind of the gist of it. And so I agreed, and we transitioned to some kind of other realm, or I don't exactly understand it, but we were able to start looking at different people I could become. And first, they showed me a life they had planned for me that they thought it was a good fit. And essentially, I would have been a very angry person. My life would have been dominated by anger, but it's like spiritually, by my soul working against that natural physical predisposition to anger, it would help my soul to become more peaceful. But basically, I would have been an angry person my whole life. And I flat out refused it. I told them, no, I'm not going to live that life. I completely refused. And they respected that. They respected my no. And they said, okay, well, let's look at some other possibilities. And so we looked at some nearby parents, and they seemed like a good fit. And we started to look at, okay, well, what kind of person could I be if I was born to these other parents? And initially, I wanted to be a female. I think what happened is in a previous life, I may have been a soldier or something. I don't know, but I think I hurt people. And so I really didn't want to hurt people in this life. Like that was very important to me. And I felt like if I was a female, I would be less likely to hurt other people. They just seemed like naturally less violent or something like that. That was my opinion. That wasn't what anybody told me. Um, and so we started looking at the females, and it became apparent that these parents that we were looking at, if I was born to them, red hair was an option that was available. And somehow I really liked that idea of being a redheaded girl, and the fact that red hair was rare, like I really liked that. That really appealed to me to be something somewhat unusual. Um, but it also quickly became obvious that like there weren't a whole lot of genes, so like my options would be limited. And if I picked a redheaded girl, there was all kinds of other traits that I couldn't pick as easily. And essentially, I would have ended up becoming an awkward person. I would have had trouble making friends. I would have been single my whole life. I wouldn't ever get married or have kids. And that was kind of like a deal breaker. Like that didn't seem like that worked for me. So I thought, well, let's look at the male possibilities. And so we started looking at males. And again, I wanted to be red haired, but the genes just weren't there. It wasn't the right fit. But it quickly became apparent that being a male is just a better it was just a better fit for me. And if I chose brown hair, like that was the dominant trait for these parents. So there was tons of options. Like I could really fine tune what I wanted if I went with brown hair. So that's what I went with, and we started looking at all these other traits. I wanted to be incredibly good looking, like the best looking guy on the planet. And my guides, they were kind of like, okay, hang on a second, those options are available to these parents. You can be really good looking, but here's the spiritual downside to that choice. You'll be arrogant. Um, Women will treat you differently. There'll be certain temptations available. And, it's kind of like where you are with your spiritual development. You won't be able to resist certain temptations. And essentially, I would have been too promiscuous. And when I say too promiscuous, I don't mean like that's fundamentally wrong. It's just like at higher vibrations, it just doesn't go along with being very promiscuous. And so I wanted to move to higher vibrations. And so being really good looking and promiscuous, it didn't match. And so we scaled the attractiveness down to a little bit attractive, but nothing, no one's going to put me on a magazine cover or anything like that. Um, and then uh, we did the same thing with the intelligence. I was like, I want to be like the smartest guy on the planet, just absolutely brilliant. And my guides were like, okay, those options are available to these parents, those genes that you could do that if you want it. But here's the downside. You would become arrogant, you would look down on other people, uh, you would have trouble making friends, you would end up being an atheist. Like they showed me the kind of person I would become if I was that intelligent. And it just wasn't the right fit for the higher levels of spiritual development that I was aiming for. And so, likewise, we lowered the intelligence down to a smart person, but no Albert Einstein or Aristotle or anything like that. Just a little bit smart, but nothing extraordinary, no super genius or anything like that. Um, and we looked at everything about this body that uh, I was considering. I got to select like height and eye color, everything down to the most intimate detail. We took a good look at it and how it would affect my life and my relationships and all this stuff. And finally, we selected the body that I felt like was the right fit for me. And when we had the body finalized, my guides they were like, okay, well, we have some plans for your life now that we need to run by you. And they would show me like clips from previous lives. They would show me stuff I had done, and they would show me how that was going to be incorporated into my upcoming life. Uh, the most the clearest example I had was in a previous life, and they showed me this, that I had been kind of like a big, strong guy, and somehow I got in a disagreement with this other guy, and like I beat him up really bad. And my guide showed me that whole scene, and it was clear that uh, it was unnecessary for me to beat up the guy. I could have easily avoided the fight. I could have ended the fight earlier. Like I beat him up way beyond what was necessary for the situation or appropriate, or like I was just way out of line. And in that spiritual setting where you can like see everything from this situation, it was just obvious that I shouldn't have acted like that. Um, and my guides had a plan now where it was kind of like what I had done in this previous life. It's like I've written a check and now I needed to cash it, or I had some karma that I now needed to relieve. There's a lot of ways to say this, but basically what I had done, now I was going to be on the receiving end of it. I was going to receive kind of like what I had previously given out. And their plan, excuse me, the plan was that as a young teenager, I would get in a fight and have my nose broken, to make a long story short. But they needed my agreement in order to make that part of my life plan. And I agreed to it because I knew that it was like baggage that was holding me back or holding me down spiritually. And that by going through this difficult experience, even though it would be difficult, it would help me spiritually with my progression. And so I agreed to their plan. And likewise, they showed me a number of other things I had done. They showed me times I had hurt other people. Um, and they had planned for my life that I was going to dislocate my shoulder, and then they had another plan where I was going to dislocate and break my other shoulder. And this was both of those injuries were related to how I had mistreated someone in a previous life. And they showed me other things I had done in previous lives that are kind of too personal to go into. Some stuff that, bad stuff that I had done in a previous life that I would never do now. I guess that's the one silver lining here, is that some of this stuff I had done in previous lives, like I would not do that stuff today, but I had done it in a previous life, and it was going to be integrated into this upcoming life. But again, they needed my permission, they needed my approval to make this plan work. But because it was it was going to like liberate me from what I had done by going through and receiving, being on the other side of this thing. It's like it liberated me and allowed me to move to higher levels of spiritual, like higher spiritual levels, greater happiness. Like it would help me spiritually to go through this stuff. And so I agreed to their plans. And then they had other plans arranged for my life that had nothing to do with something I had done in a previous life. They had ways where I could help another person, or there might be some person in my life that I would be able to interact with them in a specific way that could either help them or help me. But they had all kinds of little plans and bigger plans. Um, uh, but a lot of this stuff they needed my agreement to. Like they wouldn't just force this on me. But I agreed to their plan for the most part. But there were a couple things where I didn't agree. I didn't go along with their plan. But one example I could point out was there was a coworker I was going to have, and this was someone who had been a friend in a previous life, and now as a coworker, he was going to be someone that we didn't really get along very well. We were going to kind of like not see eye to eye on things, and we would have to exert more effort to be civil to each other, to work with each other, to get the job done. And that would help us both spiritually by because we would need to exert more effort to get along. It's like that would help us spiritually. Anyway, there was a lot of different things that they had planned out, and relationships and all kinds of stuff. And they wanted my agreement for all these different plans, but I agreed to most of it. And when we had all these plans worked out, it's like they could easily work with the other guides for these other souls, and they could easily uh, integrate all these different lives together. Like that was no challenge at all. But I needed to agree to anything that was above some certain level of difficulty that it would add to my life. Anyway, when it was all planned out, they asked me to look at my life as a whole, and they basically said, okay, now that we look at everything, all these decisions as a whole, do you agree to this? Are you sure you agree to this, that you're willing to live this life? And I looked at the whole thing as a whole, and uh, and I said, yes, I agree. I will live that life. Yes. And with that, my memory ended. Like I was back to being in my neighbor's backyard. My question had been answered, and excuse me. And I had another question. I wanted to know, okay, it's obvious that I've lived many lives. Like that was just painfully obvious. What was I doing between lives? Like what did that look like? And so I was shown like a number of brief clips or snippets or like almost like short, like a highlight reel, I guess. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I was shown a number of different like realms I had been in and what I had been doing between lives. And some of them were very unpleasant and some of them were very pleasant. The worst experience that I saw was I guess I had been like a violent person in life and I had died and like I looked like a horrible monster. I was in some kind of horrible realm with a whole bunch of others who looked just like me, and we just fought with each other constantly. Um, and no matter how badly we would injure each other, it's like the injuries would quickly heal, but we would just keep fighting over and over again. It was this endless battle. Nobody could ever win this battle, and we all just hated each other deeply, and it was just awful. Like I couldn't even explain how bad it was. Um, just misery and violence and fighting each other. That's all it was. And after doing that for, time doesn't really seem to apply, but I was like that for a while. And eventually, somehow it's like I got tired of fighting with others and something changed in me. And I stopped, like, I didn't want to fight with the others anymore. Like, I stopped fighting. And as soon as I stopped fighting, I noticed that there was beings of light up ahead, up above all of us, kind of like angels, I guess. And one of them like swooped down and pulled me up out of this horrible fight. And I said, why did you take me out of there?" And he explained that when I didn't want to fight with the others, I didn't belong there anymore. Like that's kind of like exactly what he said. And he further went on to tell me that every one of those souls that was there in this hellish, horrible realm fighting with each other, like every one of them would eventually leave, and none of them were going to be stuck there forever. He directly told me that. And as I understand it, I then transitioned on to another life. And I saw this other realm I had been in, where it's like it was dark. It looked kind of like a small town. The buildings were like crooked. It was dusty and dark, and everybody there was kind of unhappy. But we weren't like miserable, but we were unhappy. And again, there was like these beings of light that would go around, and one of them offered to help. Basically, he offered to help move me to a happier realm. And he was able to like open up my vision and allow me to see some sort of higher level spiritual realm where I could see these souls that were extremely happy. Just it looked like the kind of the biblical images of like angels flying around in a cloud. Like that's kind of what it looked like. And those beings were extremely, extremely happy. And I wanted that kind of happiness for myself. And this being of light, he basically explained that I could eventually get to that level, but I needed to go through more experiences. Like I needed to grow and to change myself, and that he could help arrange that, but I needed to accept that help. Like he couldn't force it on me. Um, but I accepted his help, and then he helped transition me out of this realm. And another unhappy realm I had been in, it was like it was complete darkness, and I was just standing around with other souls, and we were all kind of like lost and confused, and we didn't know what was going on. Um, and I remember there was like a female soul, or another soul that somehow had like a female characteristic, and she was just uttering profanity the whole time. And the profanity that she was yelling was way worse than anything you could ever hear on Earth. But we were just kind of like lost and confused and didn't know what was going on. But there was higher level souls, kind of like beings of light that were going around offering to help us. But we were all mistrustful. We had been dishonest people in life, and so we had a really hard time accepting that these beings of light were there to help us. That was like a foreign concept, and like it was really hard for us to understand that. But eventually, I got tired of being in that state, and I accepted the help from one of these beings of light. And so he was able to help transition me out of that realm into, I guess, another life. And then I saw some happier realms I had been in. One was it looked like a medieval town. They had roads and buildings, and I remember a lamppost very clearly. It was very ornate and beautiful, and there was souls there that were existing just like they had in life. They had jobs, they were doing stuff, they were like talking to each other. It looked just like a medieval town, but everything was perfected. The problems that they had had in life, they didn't exist anymore, and they were all very happy. But I quickly recognized that this was kind of like a midway realm, I guess. And so I quickly left because I didn't want to, like, I wanted to quickly move to higher levels of spiritual progression. So I didn't want to stay in that realm for long. And then there was this other realm I was in where uh, it was like a city of light, and the buildings were made of translucent light. All the people there or souls there were translucent. You could see through them and into them, and we were extremely happy. I kind of can't believe I ever left that realm, but the happiness there was extraordinary, and it's just absolutely beautiful. But I don't know, for some reason I left that realm. But with that, it's like that answered my question. These memories that showed me some of the experiences I had between lives. It answered the question I had, so I was back to just floating around my neighbor's yard. And I had the realization that, oh my gosh, when I leave this body, when I leave this incarnation, this life, I'll be able to move on to a happier spiritual realm. Somehow I like intuitively knew that, and I was so excited about it. I was done. I was ready to leave this life and get back to this happy spiritual realm, and I was just thrilled about it. But it's kind of like as soon as I had that realization, this beautiful being of light came to me, and uh, I'd like to just describe him for a moment. He had like a masculine, like a male figure to him, I guess. I'm not sure why, but anyway, he was absolutely beautiful. And because he was translucent, like you could see these beautiful physical features on the outside, but you can also like see into these beings of light. You can like see their internal characteristics. They have like an internal attributes and uh, I don't know. It's like you can see them internally and know them at a deeper level, and that creates a level of intimacy and a connection that doesn't exist in this world. Like you can just look at someone and know them in a deep, intimate way that you can't that doesn't really replicate here on Earth. Anyway, he was absolutely beautiful, but he told me you are not to leave your body, and I felt like I was being rebuked. Like I had, it seems like I bent the rules a little bit by leaving my body. I don't understand exactly, but it was clear he wanted me back in my body. And it's like, bam, when he said that, I was back inside my body and I stood up and I was very confused about the whole situation. And at that point, my brother had stopped playing with our friends and he'd come over to check on me. I guess I'd been laying there long enough that he was concerned about me. But as soon as I stood up, he went back over to his friends, and I went home and tried to explain this situation to my mom. But as a little kid, I had speech problems. There were certain letters I couldn't pronounce. There's no way I could explain this to my mom at that age. But I would think about my experience like every day. I would think about it and be like, wow, well, what was that? What happened? And after maybe 6 months, 8 months, something like that, uh, my guides contacted me, and I could tell exactly who it was. It was, we each have a unique fingerprint, or if you hear someone's voice that you know them, like you immediately recognize. It was kind of like that, but it wasn't a voice. This was like telepathic, direct communication, very clear. I knew exactly who it was, and they essentially said that they needed to hide my experience from me. They told me that it was interfering with me living life as intended. Uh, that because of what I had seen, I would never be able to develop faith, and that faith was really, really important. Like somehow there's a huge spiritual benefit of faith that we can only gain by having like ignorance, by not like really knowing about God. Um, but because of what I had seen, I couldn't develop faith. And furthermore, uh, in order to really prepare myself for some of the stuff I had seen, they wanted to change my life plan. Like some of it, I don't know, disturbing or anyway, to prepare me for some of this stuff I had seen, they wanted to change my life plan so that I would be able to properly handle some of the stuff that I had seen. And so, but they needed my agreement to change my plan or to hide this memory. But I agreed to it. I knew that they were there to help me and that they were right. So I agreed to their plan, and they assured me when I was older, I'd be able to get these memories back. But for a long time, they were going to hide all these memories from me. And so I agreed, and I didn't think about my experience anymore for years and years and years. I went through life. I got older. As a teenager, I had my nose broken during this fight. Basically, I had no idea that this is something I had agreed to before life. I dislocated this shoulder. I dislocated and broke this shoulder later in life. I had no memory at all that this is something I had agreed to. All of this was a difficult experience to go through. I got married, had kids, and then I think it was about 13 years ago, I was reading a Newsweek magazine article about a guy named Dr. Eben Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience, and he'd written a book. Anyway, this magazine article briefly described, his experience and what happened. And somehow it hit me at a deeper level. And like I believed his account. I believed what they were saying about it. I guess I had deeper faith in God in that moment than I had previously in life. I'm not exactly sure, but somehow that moment triggered the recall of all these memories that I had hidden, that had been hidden since I was a little kid. And it's like it all came back to me. Um, and so, for the last 13 years or whatever it's been, I've been trying to process these memories and understand them. And now I'm to the point where I'm just trying to share my experience with others and explain what I saw, because I think it could possibly be helpful to other people to understand, uh, this bigger reality we're all a part of.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Erin. Very detailed as well. So I do appreciate it. And, sharing your experience because it does help. My guides kind of say, well, we're the new earthers. So we're seeding new plants, of the things that we've experienced by sharing our experience. So
Okay.
thank you.
Right.
So I kind of want to dive into some of what you've talked about and shared with
Okay.
so far. Everything there is very important and very similar to a lot of the near-death experience. So there's a lot of hallmarks,
Okay.
like the light and the light beings, our spirit guides, past life plan or our life planning, past lives, things like that. Did you experience the void at all?
Yeah. At one point, and I'm not exactly sure when this was, but yeah, I was in this void. The best description I've heard was inky blackness in all directions. It's
Mm,
like I was all by myself. There's nothing there. It's totally black. And it wasn't like a negative experience or a positive experience. It felt very neutral to me. But yeah, at one point I was in in some kind of realm like that.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I experienced that, and that was like kind of where when I first came out of the body,
Okay.
it was
Right.
pitch black, and then the light came into the pitch black, and then went into the light. So that was really interesting. Yeah, there was like nothing there, but it was like where I realized I didn't have a body
Right.
in that space. And I like that you talk about, being an orb. A lot of people don't make that connection with being orbs of light, a lot of people will say, oh, those are ghosts or whatever. But realizing that's part of our who we are, our consciousness. I've had a lot of different experiences with that. So just briefly, I was meditating on a beach and it was sundown and I got like through telepathy to take a picture. So I took a picture and there was all these orbs around me while I was meditating. And then I was doing yoga and I came out of my body, went into an orb that was hovering over top of my body. And then I realized I was out of the body and I went back down into the body. So we are the orbs,
Right.
that you might see. So that's really interesting. Um, and with the orbs, you said you were able to see like with God's face, they were coming out. Did they look like human, like our faces, or did they have certain aspects to their faces? Do you remember?
Uh, I don't remember the details. It was definitely like two eyes and a mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But exactly what they look like, I don't recall. But I could clearly see faces. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
that, like when they came to the surface, I could see their faces, and that
Like features like what we have.
I think so. But I don't know if it doesn't quite translate right or what. But uh,
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely faces. It looked like basically like a human face. But I couldn't describe in better detail than that.
Okay. All right. Um, and then with your experience, you said that when you were looking at it and they were answering your question about people that you would be able to help, do you recognize them in this lifetime, who they were?
Yeah, some of them I do, definitely.
Okay. Is that just an energy or vibration, or you just kind of know it, or has that?
For some of them, I remember the circumstances that I agreed to and some of the details. I can't get into all those details with everybody, but some of it I
Right.
remember very clearly. And now that I have this knowledge, these memories back, I understand the situations in my life a lot better and why certain things happen the way they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times we may not, even though we plan our lives, we may not remember. So that's
Right.
awesome. Um, yeah, and then in the light, when you were in the light, did it feel like love? Because a lot of people with the near-death experiences, they say it feels like love in the light.
Yeah, I think that certainly fits, but to say like it doesn't give it justice. Like it's so much more than just love, but that's
Mm-hmm.
the probably the best word for it. Just loving, um, and just it feels like I don't know, being home. Like that's where we belong, is in this loving light, and it's just absolutely wonderful in a way that I couldn't possibly describe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And when you were planning your life, there's a lot of topics that can come up around that, as far as planning our lives. And because you mentioned free will, and even though we have made our plans, before coming in, we still have free will where we can make
Right.
those choices and adjustments. And one thing that came into me shortly after my experience was there's always a plan B.
Right.
So we do make multiple options. So it's not just one.
Right.
Is that right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that that makes perfect sense to me. I view it like a like my guides are like my travel agent. We plan this trip, but that doesn't mean I can't make changes while I'm on the trip or do something different than was initially planned. It's just like that was the initial plan, and there's lots of plan B, plan C, plan D. Like they've got it worked out, all kinds of iterations of all these different choices I can make. Somehow they're still able to plan for all that. So yes, we have planning, but we also have free will. They both exist together just fine.
Mhm. Now, did they say anything to you, like if you don't meet your goals or what lessons that you're aiming for in life, what happens?
No, they didn't explicitly say anything like that. Um, it definitely felt like some decisions I could make would lead to higher levels of spiritual uh, development and spiritual happiness after this life. But it wasn't like a right or wrong answer. It's more like these are all viable decisions, and our ultimate destination is the same. Whatever path we want to take to get there, it's like we can make our own journey harder or easier, but it's like we're all going to end up in the same place anyway. So um, it's not like
Yeah.
it's just horribly wrong if you do something different or other than was initially planned. It's just a different path, a different way to get there.
Right, right, exactly. And with the life planning and the agreements, because a lot of people may say, "Well, I didn't certainly agree to this," what would you share with them, if they're going through something traumatic?
Right. Yeah, I hear that a lot. People say I didn't agree to this. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't know. I couldn't really answer that. But to everybody, I'd say, look, there is a huge benefit to life. Like we get a colossal spiritual benefit from coming here. And probably the benefit that you got is so extreme that you agreed to these short temporary difficulties, and try to ask yourself, how big of a benefit would I need in order to agree to this horrible thing I'm going through? And for most people, it's like, well, it would be an extraordinary. Well, then there's your answer. Your spiritual benefit is extraordinary, and that's why you agreed to this stuff, most likely. But again, everyone's particulars. I couldn't, I couldn't say anyone's specific thing, but there's a huge benefit to life, and you will get past this, and you will get through these difficulties, and you'll find yourself in a much better situation eventually.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Because sometimes, like because I've done a lot of self-work and healing, around my life, and I've been shown a lot of stuff. So when I look at it, I'm like, okay, did my soul create this as part of my experience and my healing? I get a different energy and vibration feeling when I tune into that versus me saying I didn't choose this, I didn't create this. This wasn't part of what I would want. Right. So and there's like this feeling that if you feel into it, and I don't know if you can sense or do any of that type of inner healing work, but when you accept it, it just feels more different. Do you know what I mean?
I think so. There's times I feel like I'm in tune, or I'm in line with how I should be acting, and how life should be going. And then there's times I feel like I'm not so much in tune with all that. And I guess that's kind of how I see it. Is there's times where I really feel like I'm in the right kind of flow, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't always feel like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you like with your family now? How do they react when you share your experience? How do they see that? Have you gotten any feedback on that?
Yeah, it's been a big range. From people thinking I'm just nuts or crazy to people really like understanding and accepting what I'm saying, and I think benefiting from it. It's been a wide range. And every person's unique, and some people, for one reason or another, can't. I don't know. They can't connect with what I'm saying, but some people can. And so that's true with the general public, and it's true with my family too. And so I just aim sharing my experience to people who are interested, who want to hear it, and if they can benefit from me sharing this experience, then that's great. And if they don't want to hear it, or they think I'm crazy, that's fine too.
Mhm. Yeah, because a lot of times people's lives will change once they start talking about it and sharing it. And so
Right.
it can definitely change. I know my life has totally changed since then. Um, but also, I kind of wanted to talk about, with, not talking about it, like a lot of times we don't have the words for it, and so we can't really speak to it. And even now, it's hard to find the words for, the
Yeah.
situations. There's certain things that has happened that I don't have words for, so I haven't really shared parts of it. But at some point, I will. So, oh, I
No, I
guess
completely understand what you're saying. There's parts of my experience that I can't put into words. There's no way for me to
mhm.
explain some of this stuff.
And I also too went through the whole thing where when I came back, they told me I wasn't going to remember everything because I still had stuff to work out. So I can relate to that. And then later on, it would
Right.
start coming back. And this was as I continued to meditate after I went through all that, because it was like a couple of years span from the near-death experience where I still had to work out some stuff, before it
Yeah.
would come back. So I completely understand that. And with the like this intelligence, I know you already explained about, God not as a him, as a male, which was one of my questions. So thank you for answering that. But
Okay.
was it all telepathy, um, communication when you were
Yeah, that's
having
that's
these
what I remember
answers
it
come
all.
in?
Yeah, like any communication in the spiritual realm, it's like it was mind to mind communication, just direct telepathy.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, do you know who your guides are?
No,
Because
not really.
some people will say like, oh, it's Jesus or Gandhi or
Right.
Buddha, or Archangel Michael. Do you know who yours are?
To me, it seemed like they were people or souls who had lived multiple lives on Earth before, and they had reached some level of progression, and now it's like they were working as guides. So they had
Mhm.
the personal experience of, living on Earth, but they were advanced enough that they could provide guidance for me.
And so with the hell realms, there's definitely different realms. And what you
Yeah,
say makes sense because whenever we don't fit in there anymore, we make that choice with free will that we are no longer
yeah,
there. And some of the near-death experiences I talked to also say it's more, I don't, it's hard to say too, because it's not really a place. It's like a state of
right,
being, like a mind, a mental realm or something, when we're in that
right.
space.
The way I see it is, we're at some level of mental, like the way we think, our mindset, it's at some spiritual level. And if
Mm,
we hate others, we want to hurt others or torture them or kill or whatever. If you're in that kind of mindset, you're going to end up with others who are just like you. And if you have a whole bunch of souls who want to kill others that are all together, well, I mean, obviously it's going to be horrible. They're going to try to kill each other. And that's what I saw. That's what it was like, and it was just awful. And
mm,
the only thing I'd really like to say about these horrible spiritual realms is that look, there are souls who suffer. I saw it for myself, and so have countless other people. But nobody is stuck like that. All these souls are going to be able to get out of that suffering realm or mindset or whatever it is. They're going to be able to progress and move on to happier spiritual levels, and they're just not
mm.
stuck like that forever.
Right, right. Yeah, and some people have asked me too. It's like, well, what about Hitler?
Right,
Because I've been shown that there's no actual physical hell like religion likes to portray, but it's more of a
right,
consciousness awareness or, just the experience that we're choosing. Even if we're wounded or hurt or we suffer in life, whatever the case may be, not that just necessarily we've done something to another person, but it's the state of mind that we're living in, because we can't necessarily go back fully to the other side if we're in that state of being because there's no match, right? So it's like a vibration energy. So if you're still holding, anger, hate, we can't be one with the light. And so we are ready to change that. So that makes
right.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
God is. Yeah, I just want to say God is like loving, kind, compassionate, honest, all those things. If we can't let go of the hatred, dishonesty, malice, jealousy, if we can't let go of that stuff, well, we're not going to fit in naturally to these higher levels where those it's like it's incompatible. And so we got to get rid of this
mhm.
negative stuff before we're going to fit in properly in the higher levels of heaven.
Yeah. And too, like the other day, like something came into me is like when we find love in all our situations, no matter what that is, like love expands, we expand upon ourselves and then source expands too as well. So it kind of makes sense to what you're saying there. And again, I'm still trying to put two and two on certain things together when I get these little downloads and inspirations of thought,
Right.
as it comes to me and it continues to unfold. You were saying that the light, when you see in God's face, we'll put it God or source, whatever you want to call it, like you would join that and that would expand.
Right.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Would you say, because a lot of people will say, we're always tested, our experiences are tests. I don't necessarily look at them as tests, but lessons.
Right. I mean, I personally don't view it as a test. Like that's not the word I would use. I think a lesson it more fits. That's a better word to describe how I view it. Is like we're here for lessons, to learn, to educate ourselves, to grow. I don't personally view it as a test.
Now, with the spiritual awakenings, near-death experience out of body, when people come back, they have either awakened their intuitive abilities or they've expanded. Have you had any of those experiences where you recognize any expansion there?
I think I feel like I'm a little more intuitive than maybe I used to be. And you said something about getting the download. Like I can really connect with that. Like I feel like there's times where my guides or God or somebody is kind of like telling me something. And so that really connects with my views is that I do feel like sometimes like they share stuff with me.
Mhm.
But it's not the direct telepathic communication I had back when I was a kid or when I was in the spiritual realm. It's not that obvious or straightforward. But yeah, I do feel like I have a maybe a deeper conscience, or I'm better able to receive some of that communications, or get pointed in the right direction sometimes.
And you talked about the gifts, talking about downloads and things like that. The gifts, you kind of mentioned them as like like you'll be getting like a cookie or something like that. Do you know like what type of gifts they are? Were they like initiations, or how would you explain that?
Right. I don't know what they were. I couldn't really describe it. It doesn't really translate well, but there was some sort of gift, something we enjoyed that we would
Hmm.
get periodically. Um, and it gave us a temporary boost in happiness.
Okay, all right. Because I was wondering if it was something that would like help us as we're going into the different lifetimes. You know what I mean? Something that would help with that. Um,
Yeah,
so,
I just don't know. I don't know exactly what it was.
okay. Um, and each soul you talked about, each soul is unique.
Uh, I mean, what I saw, or how it was explained, was basically that we're all unique. We're all irreplaceable. No two are identical. If you think about snowflakes, like no two snowflakes are identical, and how much simpler is a snowflake than a soul?
Hmm.
Um, we all bring something to the table that no one else can replicate, and that's very important. And it means that no soul is like it just wouldn't work to discard them or throw them away. It's like an irreplaceable, very valuable thing, each and every soul.
Hmm.
And there's some sort of future for us. We all fit in. We're all part of the bigger plan.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of comes to me like what I'm when you're saying that like this one download I had was like weird kind of it's like you ever see the race where you're passing off the baton and then the other
Hmm.
person goes and then the next person goes. It kind of
Right.
reminds me of that. That's what's coming in when you're talking about that. It's like this can't be unless that was. And so we all have that unique spark or that divine knowledge within us that we bring to the table
Yeah.
for that. And so everybody's important. I know sometimes a lot of people will talk about, they felt either forced. You said you were kind of, would you say it was forced, or they made you just feel because you felt they made you feel like you were doing something wrong?
No, I would never say forced. I never felt like I was forced into anything.
Mm-hmm.
Encouraged, yes, or uh, basically, it was explained to me why it was beneficial to me to do something. And so I would agree to it. But I would not say I was ever forced or manipulated into doing something like,
Mm-hmm.
and the stuff they wanted me to do was for my own good. Um, and you know, I never felt forced.
Other topics that maybe you wanted to share?
I guess just one is that, God is loving, kind, compassionate, honest, forgiving, caring, generous, all these positive, loving traits. Like that's what God is. And for us to get the most out of life and the afterlife, we need to embrace those same traits for ourselves. And so, we can learn all sorts of issues or details about how the spiritual realms work. But really, to make the most out of life, we got to embrace these loving mindsets, these loving concepts, be good to other people. Like that's really what I saw as most important during my experience. And so I just stress that over and over again, that that's where we should aim the majority of our efforts, is just trying to embrace these loving mindsets.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if somebody wanted to make change in the world, what is the best way that they can do that?
Love your neighbor, help others in whatever way makes sense, be good to those around you. Like I think it's really that straightforward. That's how we change the world.
And where people can find you, do you have any books or a website or where you share more information?
Yeah, so Aaron Thomas Green. I have a website, aaronthomasgreen.com, and also I have a book I'm working on that should be out in June. Here's a cover of the uh, a copy of the cover, Emerging from the Light. Anyway, I go into more detail about my experience and just explain what had happened. It'll be you can find it on Amazon, or there'll be a link on my web page, and it'll be free to download if someone doesn't want to buy it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your offerings.